Good afternoon. I'm Mary Beth Sabatek from the Psychoenergetic Institute. And first of all, I want to tell you, I know that the title of this is very, very harsh, but I want to share a story with you of something that just happened to me very recently with a person that I was having actually, I wasn't having a conversation with her. I posted something. I spent some time on some forums for PTSD and toxic relationships. And I had talked about being able to heal the chemicals in the brain over time that helps us to be able to manage anxiety and PTSD and the way that we look at things between the mind, body, and spirit. It is when we have something going on in the mind, it affects the body and the spirit. And when we have something going on in the spirit, it affects the mind and the body. And when we have something going on in the mind, it affects the body and the spirit. So it's all joined and it's all connected. So I had put on there that we have the power. I really get disheartened when I hear people sharing that. I see people identifying with a traumatic event, and as human beings, we are going to experience them. And sadly, some people do have far worse events than others. But being in the coaching and counseling field for since the 1980s, with kind of a 6-year hiatus in there, to retrain and get some new skills, then I discovered that a lot of times I would see clients, and if you were to weigh them on a scale of who had the worst event or the other, then you would have someone that had something that, so maybe they got broke up with, and they're up here in the same emotion or turmoil. And years later, I knew a guy that for years just carried this around. Oh, well, so and so, his girlfriend broke up with him and he never got over it. And it was 6 years later, and he just sour. And so anyway, so in this, so I was talking about this, how we have that power, because I love to see people empowered, because you can be empowered. And so this person wrote and said to me, she said, as a person who has had a ton of therapy and has more or less managed, learned to manage my condition, I really hate to hear the term owning responsibility for your future. Just to explain, you have to understand what PTSD is, and it is a physical issue, not personally or purely mental. When a severe trauma occurs, it actually can physically change the brain, which it can. It can change the brain chemicals. And so she said, I can't fix my brain no matter how much I work at bettering my coping mechanisms. And I have to stop right there, because your brain, my brain, when we have a physical chemical change because of this, it can be fixed and it can be reversed, but it has to happen. It didn't happen overnight to change those chemicals, so it's not going to happen changing them back fast. But we can, over time, and with using the mind, body, spirit approach, and we'll get into a little bit of that, we can change that chemical in the brain. So she went on to say, I will always have that brain injury from the emotional trauma that injured my brain. And that's a lie that is fed from all different places. I see this in advertising. I see it coming sometimes from the mental health industry and various directions. And it grieves me, because our bodies are healing machines, and barring an accident where there's some damage, illness, our body can turn around and heal itself when we provide the conditions. So we have a part in this. So when I hear somebody say that my brain is always going to send it cannot be healed, first of all. Um, I will always have that brain injury. Then she said, my brain is always going to try to send me back into that trauma again and again and again. I can't control that. I can't take responsibility for that. I didn't do something evil to myself. And she goes on to explain what happened, which is very traumatic. And and then she said, what I do and how I imagine it is I imagine that my vagina is a wood chopper and it is chopping up whatever goes into it. And this it was an incident that she had. And um, she says, it sucks, but it's the only power I have over that now. And so, what this beautiful soul doesn't realize is she does have the power, but she's using her power to go back to the event because in order for that defense mechanism, that empowerment that she has chosen to kick in, what has to happen? She needs to be offended again. She needs to be violated again in order for her to imagine having power over that. Then the violation needs to happen again. And so this is something that she wrote in response because I had said I had was sharing that we can have that power by encapsulating ourselves so that when those things come in, those thoughts, they hit that shield outside of us and it doesn't have to come in and violate because when it does, when we when we frame it in a way of my vagina is a wood chopper, then that defense will only get kicked in if she's being violated. So then she went on and she says, my brain hasn't been reliving the trauma as badly as it did for a long time in the aftermath, but it still happens. So what that tells me right there is her brain is already trying to heal itself because it was worse and it's gotten better. And so as I look at this, then let's see, I just took a couple notes here. So the brain, it can get stuck. She said it can get stuck in an ongoing nightmare, but that's because her method of empowerment is to recreate the nightmare in order for her to feel empowered. So it's not, it's a choice that she is making to continuously go back to that traumatic event in order to have power. So again, she's bringing herself back to the nightmare. And one of the things, like when she talks about my brain, I can't fix my brain no matter what, no matter how much I work on bettering myself and improving my coping mechanisms. If you improve your coping mechanisms, you're laying a foundation for the brain chemicals to change. Our bodies are healing machines, so it can't help but to start healing itself. The other thing I want to respond to is my brain is always going to send me back. And I did respond to that yes, because you're bringing yourself back to it. And that's where coming up and reframing that power that you have for that shield, not to shield positive people and relationships out, but that shield to keep you from being violated again, to not allow that violation to come into your immediate energy sphere. And she said, let me see. Okay, so I addressed that her power. Now I go back to how we treat it in the therapy field because I see over and over that we are in the mental health field, then we're getting people to own this and own this label and own this diagnosis and own your illness. And so what I see is people identifying with these illnesses and click that off for a second. People identifying with their labels and they're forgetting about their own talents and the own awesome things that they are empowered with, that they were divinely gifted with. And years ago, I was doing couple counseling with a couple, and she was actually in her sixth marriage, and he was in his third, and they were actually in the ministry. And the issue that was happening is it was tearing their church apart, because when they were at church, she would share with everyone, this is what he does, and that's what he does. And so it was kind of, people were starting to feel like they had to pick sides. And in the session, what I started noticing is when in the session, she would, well, my first husband did this and my second one. And I started noticing from working with the elders in the church who referred them to me, and being at some events where she was there, that she spent a lot of time when she would meet new people and she would say, well, I'm an abuse survivor, and this husband was an alcoholic, this one beat me, this one cheated, this one was emotional. And she identified with that. But what she never talked about is this lady was an amazing seamstress and a designer, and it never came up. And so one night in our session, when she started on about the abuse, I stopped her and I said, I have a rule for you. And I had already talked with the elders of the church to coordinate to get them to agree to this. But what the rule was, a contract that I wanted her to sign, was that she would no longer talk about her past abuse and talk about herself as a victim, but she would talk about herself, that she would say, hi, I'm a seamstress. I'm in this position, in this job. This is what I'd love to do. Or, tell us something about yourself. Tell us something about your life passions. Talk about your design, but you are not to talk about the the victim part, any of the past abuse. And she was so upset by that she started screaming and crying and ran out of the session. And of course, ran to the church and said, I can't go to that lady anymore because she doesn't understand me and all this. And they said, well, the choice whether you go to her is yours. However, this is a rule that, we are going to follow this guideline here. This can't happen here. And so she developed this habit of being able to talk about those things. And before you know it, just this natural thing happened, that people were going to her and, hey, can you show me how to do this? Hey, can I pay you to make this? Can I pay you to do that? Show me how to design my house. Hey, can you, if I have some girls over, can you come and be a consultant for us? And so all of a sudden, this business just naturally developed, because we took away her identifying with her past trauma and being the victim, and moving past that to her divine skills that she had, that she never even highlighted. And but what I watch over time is her transition into this amazing, beautiful, successful person, that eventually that wasn't even an issue. And I watch her go on to help other couples and to help other people who had been in trauma, and never bring it up again. And we reconnected many times over the years, and she was thankful for that time, as painful as it was. And I hope that the young lady in this situation will remember that sometimes the things that come to us like that can feel painful and it feels like a wound, but it might be just some of my greatest aha moments in life were because of something that someone said before that offended me. But when that time came that I needed that, it was in there because they said it and I was able to use it. And so when we identify with PTSD and the victimhood status, then what happens is become we become stuck there, and it's sent by divine or dark sources. Now we will go through things. We, as humans, we go through traumatic events, And sometimes it's something that was put upon us that we don't have control over. But we do have control over how we respond, we do have control and responsibility to heal ourselves and not dump it on other people to either carry it or expect them to fix it. The other thing is these things, um, some of these things happen because we make decisions. We blow through red flags with relationships, with friendships, with we want to do something and we ignore all the red flags, and then we are living the results of those choices. And so over time, our goal is to be able to learn it from those mistakes and to move beyond that. So again, there's some responsibility. Now, again, we can't help it if somebody robs our house, but we can help it if we're dating a person, a guy who is, a prescription drug addict and he's robbing our pocketbook. So those kind of things. But our choice again is how we move on from that, and the dark side would say no, identify that, stay there. Yeah, let's go with the woodchopper theory, because it will keep you from ever realizing your divine purpose or experiencing that your divine mission for being here, your soul purpose, because you're so wrapped up in that victim identity. And again, it's not to minimize the pain, because the pain is very real and it's very traumatic. But there is healing on the other side. Uh, and on the other side is your divine purpose. And so it's just important to understand that the dark forces would prefer that you don't overcome it, because if you discover who you are, like this one young lady who, the seamstress, suddenly everybody, she would just shone like a bright light, and it was like people needed her, and and it was something that she had to give to the world. It was a way that she had to give back. And so the more people that come to that place of overcoming, then that's the more that it gives back, and it makes the world a lighter, brighter place. And darkness doesn't like that light. So I once had a investment property that sat up on this hill, and it was like an English garden, and there's an Italian man that lived next door, and you parked down on the road and walked up these stairs. And when I met him, he was just kind of a rough, gruff guy. He had lived there for probably 30 years. He owned that house and was always out in the garden. And one day we were sitting there, we could look out and we could see the whole city from up there. And I said, Frank, I said, you must have really enjoyed being up here. It's kind of quiet, isn't it? And we are in the city. And he looks at me and he says, oh yeah, I've loved it. He said, when you're up here, you ain't down there. And so I thought about that, and I've used that so many times over the years, because it sounds so basic, but it's really quite profound. And so many throw it in a different context, and I've used it before here. And when you're up here and you're above that victim status, that mindset, when you're not identifying with that, but you're identifying with your divine talents and skills and your divine purpose and your amazingness, then guess what? You ain't down there. You're not in that pain. You're not in that place of trauma. So every day as you get up, ask yourself, do I want to be up here or do I want to be down there? I hope that this has helped you, that it's kind of given you, or if there's somebody that you love, that you can use to help this, with an idea that healing is possible. You can change that brain chemical change from trauma. There's a lot of things physically that you can do for yourself. They're in my other videos. Visit us, subscribe to my link at Your Amazing Soul on YouTube. Visit us on Facebook at the Psychoenergetic Institute of Hypnotherapy and Life Coaching. The name has been changed since then, but to the Psychoenergetic Institute, but Facebook won't let me change it. But I hope that you'll join me for some more videos and that I was able to help you today. And again, stay up here. Don't be down there. Thanks, and you have a great day.